chances are you know that feeding your family real, nutrient-dense whole foods is a good idea. So what keeps you from doing it? This episode is all about overcoming the barriers that you may be facing as you try to transition your family to eating real food, which I think we should all be doing at least 80% of the time. Maybe you feel like you don't have time to cook, don't feel confident cooking, don't like to cook, think that real food is too expensive, deal with picky eaters, have a spouse that isn't on board, or think that nutrition is just too complicated. You'll want to listen in because we are talking through all of those barriers and more. Corey Dunn is my guest today. She's a mom, cookbook author, and co-host of the Modern Ancestral Mamas podcast. I love the wisdom and common sense approach that she shares. We are glad to have you join us for this episode. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Meredith. I've led my family on a transformative health journey for over a decade, and now I help other families do the same. This is a place where busy moms can learn about healthy living. I hope that what you learn here helps you feel empowered to take the next step in your family's health journey. Corey, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I just feel like you are a really passionate mom on a mission. And so I would love to hear a little bit more of your story and how eating nutrient-dense foods has become such a passion for you.
Okay, so the short version goes like this. I grew up with a mom who was kind of doing all the crunchy things back before that was a cool thing to do. We were homeschooled. We lived on a hobby farm. She made all of our food at the time. And, it was just all the things you could possibly have done in the 90s without any internet to kind of, back up what you're doing. Yeah. Oh, she was completely. So then fast forward to college, I moved out. I went away to college and did my own thing, which was not at all what I was raised on. And I started to just feel really junky. But I was just like, oh, I'm just tired, because I'm in college. And I had a really demanding path. I was a theater major, and we just, I would laugh at the people who would go to their English class and then go home and write their paper, and then they'd be done at 2:30. And I'm like, okay, you're done. Cool. Now I'm going to, I'm also done with my classes, but now I have to go to rehearsal, and then we have to build the sets, and then we, all these. Yeah. So I was tired, and I just chalked up kind of feeling crummy to that. And then I got married right after college, and then we had a baby right after that, and then we had another baby right after that. And my second baby, when she was around 6 months old, developed eczema all over her body, just her whole body from her neck down to her ankles. And she was just, it just looked awful, and it seemed miserable. And I did all the conventional things that the doctors were telling me to do. And at around her first birthday, I had exhausted all of the options from the conventional medical sphere. And finally, I was just complaining to my mom, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And she said, hey, maybe you could try cutting out gluten. So we did that. And my daughter's skin cleared up within a week. And I was like, mind blown. And at the same time, around the same time, I'd also done a Whole30, which at that point was super strict. It's not really anymore. But at that point, it was a really awesome program. And I had gone from having a baby a month before, did the Whole30 in literally a month postpartum. And even though I had 2 babies under 2 and we had just moved, I felt amazing. And I was just great. I had lost all the baby weight within a month. I had I felt good, and I felt like I wasn't exhausted, which I feel like I probably should have felt exhausted, with all of those things going on. And
Sure.
and at the same time, my husband's like building a business, and it was a crazy time, but I felt physically awesome.
Mm.
And so because of that, and then my mom says, cut out gluten, and then our daughter is healed in less than a week, it kind of, set this light bulb off. And I was like, this food works. Like,
Yeah.
it's the most amazing thing. And I think before that, I had thought food is, like you eat healthy if you want to lose weight. Like, I thought I connected it to
Right.
a weight thing. I didn't really connect it to a truly health thing.
Right.
So anyway, that's the short version. So then I kind of went, oh my gosh, this is enormous. Like, everybody needs to know about this. So
Yeah.
that's
then you
how we
started
got to where we're at. Yeah.
That's amusing. I love that. I have a couple questions. So I have a daughter that's a senior. She'll be going into college next year. So your story about going to college, that hits home with me. And so what was that experience like a little bit more? I mean, did your mom, I know she was living that way and she was, making the food and doing all the things for you guys, but did you feel like she was kind of teaching you along the way and saying, hey, when you get to college, you might want to do this? Or was it just kind of like, do what you want?
my mom is a very quiet soul.
Mm-hmm.
And she is somebody that leads by example, but she doesn't really push what she's doing. So she kind of had the mindset of, what we do at home is what we do at home. And as you're growing up, you get to start making more and more choices for yourself. So, as when I was in high school, I kind of ate what everybody was eating when I was at their houses.
Right.
But at home we would eat, really well. So yes, I definitely think my mom was teaching me along the way, but I also think she is not super pushy about anything. So it was more just in a
modeling kind of.
Yeah, a leading by example sort of way.
Yeah. Just curious, you never know what kids are going to do when they leave your house.
I know. I'm much more pushy personality. And so my kids are getting a lot more less leading by, I'm leading by example too, but also more of a forward way of
vocal teaching,
having that conversation.
Talk about this. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then with, when your kiddo got eczema, was it just really the diet changes that you did, or did you have to do anything else?
No. We cut out gluten. Originally we cut out gluten and dairy, and then we kind of played with putting them back in, and she didn't have any reaction to dairy. So then, which actually I think is much harder. Dairy is much harder to cut out. But she had a gluten intolerance. So, and it was a kind of a build-up sort of thing. So she could have like a sandwich, but if she had a sandwich and pancakes and a roll with dinner and and did that multiple days in a row, she would end up having another flare. And so she basically just stopped eating gluten for years. And she's now 11, but about 2 years ago she said, because every once in a while she'd be like, can we just try and see if it still flares, and every time I'd kind of respect her and say, okay, we can try it, here's what we're looking out for. And about 2 years ago she said, I want to try again. And so we did, and nothing happened. So at this point it's been 2 years and she's eating completely like normally, like she can eat wheat without any problem. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't that really the only thing we did was cut out gluten. Now there were other things that she had that I would point to as a gut issue, where she would have night terrors. She still sometimes has some like ADHD I don't know if symptoms is the right word, but tendencies. And so we're still doing some gut healing things with her, but the wheat doesn't seem to be an issue anymore.
Wow, that's amazing, really.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so I'm just imagining you trying this Whole30 diet, trying to cut out gluten. And I know when I have done things like that in the past, I kind of talked myself into it thinking this is a temporary thing. It's not going to be forever, you know? But I know now that you feed your family real food, you feed your family nutrient dense foods, and that's your lifestyle. So
Yeah.
how was that transition like going from, just kind of a temporary Whole30 try it mindset to we really need to eat this way all the time? Like,
I mean, I think kind of once I did that and once I kind of felt the way I did, because I think most Americans don't know what it's like to feel good. I think most of us are walking around just kind of feeling like poop, and nobody really knows that they feel like poop because they've never not felt like poop. So I think that once you feel good, you just want to keep feeling good. So I don't know. I didn't I did the Whole30 for myself. My husband wanted nothing to do with it. I then kind of had my family eating mostly Whole30 paleo for a few years. And it was just kind of this is what I'm cooking, and I wasn't going to make multiple meals. And so my husband's wonderful. He'll eat what I prepare, but he's not going to follow it. If he wants to go out.
Yeah.
No, he's not going to, not at all. So at home, he would eat it, but if he wanted to just go do whatever he wanted while he was out and doing his thing, he was doing it. And I think early on I was wanted to control that a little bit more, but I also, he's not one to be controlled, and I don't want that relationship with him. I don't want to be his mother. So,
right.
I just let that one go. But we did the paleo thing for a couple of years, and then from there, I had started realizing that wasn't necessarily a sustainable option. And Whole30 itself is not supposed to be a all the time thing. It is supposed to be temporary.
Right.
So you do go into it with that mindset, but I kind of went paleo from there, which was kind of like a craze at that point. And then I started going, I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. And I want to be incorporating more grains. I want to be incorporating more legumes. I see these as real whole foods, and I see these as being nourishing. And I had done a Bible study where about eating. I don't even know where it was on one of those apps, but I can't find it anymore. So I don't know if it was I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
At that point, I had found it, and I was doing it because I was struggling with a diet culture mentality where I was, really struggling with needing to feel like I was doing it perfectly, and then I wasn't doing it perfectly because nobody can be perfect all the time. And so then it was kind of this swaying pendulum, and I was not happy about it mentally, and it wasn't doing anything. It was more of a stress point than it was a good thing for me anymore. And I was feeling like I couldn't go to social events, unless I brought my own food, and then it was awkward. And I was feeling like I needed to control my kids' food because why would I let them eat poison? And so I had to get out of that headspace, and I needed to step out of that diet culture mentality. And then at that point, so anyway, in that Bible study, I had read some verse that says something about all foods being created, all the foods that God has created for us are good foods, basically. And it specifically said grains. I remember that part. And it just kind of blew my mind. I remember texting my mother and being like, I thought, I was in on the paleo thing that grains were the devil, and how could it be that God created something so beautiful that he even references himself as the bread of life. But then, wheat is killing us. I can't reconcile these two things. And so I kind of wrestled with that for a while and came to the conclusion that I actually think wheat is a really beautiful food. Same with legumes, same with, natural sweeteners and dairy and all these things.
Yeah.
So I needed to find a way to incorporate those. And that's where we kind of fell into a Nourishing Traditions, Weston A. Price sort of diet, because in that style of eating, those foods are all considered good foods. And it's just about how they're prepared and, how they're sourced and things like that. So,
yeah. Let's go there. I think that what you said is 100% accurate. Like, you need to feel like you're doing something sustainable.
mm-hmm.
Like, if you're in the midst of this like really stressful way of eating and trying to not just do it for yourself, but your family, I mean, it's really hard, right? And I think that is the image sometimes that people have of, well, if I'm going to start eating healthy or, feed my family real foods, then it's going to be this really hard thing. And I don't know if I can do it. And so That's just becomes like this mental barrier. So I would love to like talk through some of those barriers with you and see if you struggled with those or what advice you might give moms that are struggling in those areas. So one is just the idea that you have to cook more. So moms that aren't used to being in the kitchen, was that a barrier for you, like having to get in the kitchen? I mean, because I know with, Nourishing Traditions, you have to prepare grains a certain way to be digestible and, it's things like that. And so it does take some time in the kitchen. So what are your thoughts about that?
Okay, I'll be completely honest. I have always liked to cook. So to me, that was kind of, I viewed it more as a creative outlet.
Mm-hmm.
And, before my creative outlet had been sewing. And so I would, just put my kids to bed and go sew for hours.
Yeah.
And then I was like really tired. But I kind of was able to switch that and find, I really love baking. So I started doing that more, which actually puts you in the kitchen a lot more. But I think if you don't like to cook, it can definitely be overwhelming. I think that unless you have an unlimited budget and you can just like buy everything already made, which you can if that's, but it is going to be way more expensive. There are definitely ways that you can do it without having to spend tons of time in the kitchen. There are a lot of those things that take a lot of time, like sauerkraut or bone broth or sourdough bread, or even soaking, legumes or anything like that. Those take a lot of time, but not active time.
Right.
They take 5 minutes to stir together your beans with your water and your baking soda, and then you just sit it on the counter, and that's it. And then you wait until the next day, and then you cook them.
A little bit of thinking ahead, but not a lot of like hands.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think different strategies work for different people, or different strategies can work for you at different times in your life. But we have a lot of helpers in our kitchen, if you will. Like, we have crock pots and instant pots, and we have even bread machines and blenders and food processors and like freezers and I mean refrigerator. We have all these things that make creating food a lot easier. And if you wanted to, you could make up a whole bunch of meals one weekend that'll last you the whole month. Or you could just batch cook or batch prep ingredients that you can then use throughout the whole week. I mean, I did the math on it one time and I can't remember the exact numbers, but if you were to, if you have like 30 minutes to make dinner on the weeknights, and it takes like 15 minutes to caramelize an onion, that's half your time. And that doesn't even count cutting the onion, right? So let's say you've spent 20 minutes on this onion, okay? You only have 10 more minutes to do anything else. But if on the weekend you, went, okay, well, this week I'm making, these 3 things and every single one of them needs an onion that's caramelized. I'm just going to cut up a whole bunch of onions, caramelize them all. Then, that's done. You can even do that in your crock pot. You can do it hands off. And then by the time you come to cook dinner on Wednesday night, all you do is take out a portion of the onions from the fridge and dump it in your pot, and you've saved yourself 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's those kinds of things, if you can think ahead a little bit, it's easier. That's my personality. I like to have a meal plan so that I can plan those things out. I know lots of people that don't do that, but for me, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. And then I feel like other people can chip in and help because they know what meal is coming next. So,
yeah,
today was like sourdough sandwiches for lunch, and I wasn't here when they wanted to start lunch, but they were able to start that on their own, because they knew it was on the menu plan. So it's helpful in a family, cooperative sense as well.
Yeah. I think it helps too with kids like to know what's coming.
Yes, all the time. Mom, what's for dinner? What's for dinner, Mom?
Right. And just look at the board. Like, it's on the board. Just look. So, yeah.
That's what I tell them too. It's on the menu plan.
I also think it's really helpful if you to utilize the strategy of cook once, eat twice. If you're doing that, here's dinner tonight and this is also or lunch tomorrow. Or if you're making 1 lasagna, just make 2 lasagnas and freeze the second one. Those sorts of things, just doing that is so helpful for those days when you just have nothing, have no time to make anything, or
mental capacity to
yes, when you're just done. When it's taken you until 6 o'clock to finish homeschooling your children.
Right. I love what you said about it being your creative outlet, because I actually had that moment for me too. So we tried to start eating more whole foods like about 10 years ago. I realized like when my kids were little that I was going to have to spend a lot more time in the kitchen. And so I was like, just kind of praying about that. And I knew my mindset was not great about it. I was like kind of stressed and anxious about it. And I was just like, but I did love to do creative things. And I was like, what if this is my creative thing? What if I just choose to make this my creative space where I can like pull together these nutritious meals for my family, and then it blesses everybody. So I love what you said about that, because I didn't like naturally think that, but I feel like God really helped me to get a hold of that mindset.
Yeah, I think it's really, here's the thing, right? Like, it's going to take more time. Mm-hmm. It's going to take more effort. You have the choice to make it drudgery or to make it a beautiful time that you're, able to bless your family. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a mindset thing. And not to say that you can't use hacks to make it easier, but
yes, absolutely. Use all the hacks.
Yeah.
It's smarter, not harder.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So what about the moms that maybe they don't, like dread the time in the kitchen, but they just don't feel confident in the kitchen. They don't really know how to cook, and that is kind of their barrier into really, making healthier meals for their family.
I love this question because I think that for some people like me, like it just is a natural thing. Like I just love it. And I wanted to be in the kitchen even when I was a kid. And then there's other people who are like, count me out, like 0% interested. But the thing is like, you still have to eat, right? Mm-hmm. So the good thing is, the good news is that cooking is a skill like any other skill. It can be learned. You can get better at it. It will be easier the more you do it. Yeah. You don't have to do complicated things. Like really, it doesn't have to be complicated. You can just, brown a chuck roast, throw it in your crock pot, add some vegetables and a little bit of broth, and like turn it on and walk away, you know? And that's going to be the most delicious meal. It's going to be so good. And all you're going to have to put in there is some salt and some pepper, maybe some like rosemary or thyme, and that's it. And it's going to come out and your family is going to be like, holy crap, you just made, you know, a restaurant quality meal. But the other good thing is that cooking is something that has to be done every single day, 3 times a day, most days. You get a lot of practice that way.
True. It's true.
And there's so much free information out there. There's so many cooking shows on YouTube. There's so many free resources all over the place. There's, you know, library cookbooks. Like, just, I hate to be the one to say like, suck it up and do it, but you just kind of sometimes have to suck it up and do it.
I feel like if you could find like 5, you know, nutritious meals that your family likes, you know, and that are easy, that you can learn how to cook, you know, and then you can feel confident with at least 5 meals, like that would be a really great starting point.
Absolutely.
You probably don't want to have like the same meal every night, but if you could have at least 5,
yeah,
you know,
totally.
You could eat those every week if you needed to, you know.
Absolutely.
You can get to 5. That's doable.
Yeah, I would do, let's see, I would do like breakfast burritos, either a roast chicken or a pot roast, a beef pot roast, a soup, probably chicken noodle, because that's super easy. And then, let's see, 5. What would be the 5th? What would you do?
I would probably do like a meatloaf or meatballs or something, because I feel like those are really easy.
Those are
easy.
easy.
Make it friendly.
And you can make so many and put them in your freezer.
Yes, yeah.
I love it.
You can do it with so many different meats, so you could really make it different once you got confident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are great tips. I love that. And I also feel like it's, you know, kind of freeing that you don't have to make fancy meals. You know, I have found in my experience that some of the most nutritious meals are the simplest meals, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be fancy to be nutritious. So.
Or taste good.
Yeah, that's
so many times we overcomplicate things. And I mean, I've never been to one of those restaurants that has, you know, teeny tiny little things. I'm sure they're delicious, but like, you're not going to eat that. Like, fine. Like, give me, like, I want to go to the place, or I want to have the meals that are just like good, solid comfort food. My kids call it peasant food, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, right. It's the filling stuff.
Right. Just the good, like, solid food.
Yeah. What about the barrier of real food being too expensive?
Yeah, I think this is a hard one, because what's not calculated in that is the all the subsidies that go to the commodity crops. And that filters into feeding animals all those junk grains and everything. So it is more expensive. However, there are ways to do it that don't have to be, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that I'm never, ever one to say that you have to eat everything perfect. You know, we've gone through seasons of needing to have a tighter budget. And in those seasons, I just buy regular ground beef from the store, regular chicken, and or regular eggs, you know, like I get the pink styrofoam.
Not the pasture raised grass fed stuff.
Yeah.
Real beef. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I look at it and go, okay, this is still a single ingredient food. It may not be the best quality. I may not be supporting else. Right. Exactly. So yeah, I think you have to just do the best you can with your budget, and whatever that is, you know, and then just say, this is the best I can do. This is going to nourish my family. There we go.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that healthy, nutritious food has to be expensive. I definitely think there's ways that you can do it on a budget. You know, there's, you know, organic grapes, for example, are so expensive. So I just don't buy grapes. Like, we're just not going to eat that, like, very rarely. Well, I buy grapes. I think I bought them when we went canoeing this summer once. But, for the most part, I'm just like, we're not going to be a grape family, guys, because I just can't
We're not a grape family.
cost of these grapes. So,
Right.
You know what I mean, though? I mean, you don't have to buy like the most expensive steaks or seafood or whatever. You can buy beans and rice and, prepare them well, and that still be nutritious for your family and super cost friendly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So
we buy as much as we can in bulk. But before we had, when we lived in an apartment, that wasn't an option. So yeah, it's one of those things. You just got to do what you can do, the best that you can. And then don't stress about it, because the stress is going to kill you faster than anything else.
True. So my last two questions or barriers that I wanted to ask you about were kind of when your family is not on board. So either when your kids are not on board or when your spouse is not on board.
I think the spouse is harder. Although, depending on what age your kids are, that can be really difficult too. Okay, let's start. You want to start with spouse?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I think that you just have to let go. And I think that I want to caveat this by saying that if you have a good, loving relationship with your spouse and they're not, not one person is not trying to like lord over the other, then this works. If you have one of those sorts of relationships where somebody is trying to be in charge, then it's harder.
Yeah.
My husband and I are very much, on an equal footing when it comes to leading our family. And we have taken the responsibilities of the things that we're good at. So he's looked at me and said, you're really good at cooking. I'm not good at cooking. You're in charge of food. And I said, perfect, great. You're really good at making money. You make the money. So he has given me that. And I've said, great, I'm in charge of that food that comes into our home. But we've also sat down and had a conversation about, and we've done this at different points in our marriage where we've both kind of, come back to it after we've had sort of an evolution in our thinking on it. But to reassess. So like every time there's an evolution, you have to reassess. We've sat down and we've said, here's where my values are around food. Here's where, and here's, the budget that we're willing to spend on it. What are your thoughts on it? How do we reconcile this? How do we reconcile you still wanting Cheez-Its in the house and me not? But me not coming to the table saying, you are never going to have Cheez-Its in our house.
Right.
That would be me overstepping, because he's an adult. He gets to make those choices. He also is an adult who is a parent to our children. And so he is allowed to say, no, I think the kids need to have Cheez-Its. He doesn't say that for the most part, thankfully. But there have been times in our marriage where he has, and I've had to come to him and say like, hey, this is why I think this isn't a good idea. Mm-hmm. And just presented him with the information. And since he respects me and we have a mutual respect for each other, we can have that conversation and move forward from it. Maybe not both of us, landing where we wanted it to land, but, give and take.
Right. Two things I love what you said there is, you're communicating about it, first of all. You're talking about it. That's like the first step, like you have to have a lot of open communication if you're making a big lifestyle change in your home, right? And then two, respect. So even if you end up in a place where you kind of disagree, you should be able to respect each other.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you want your husband to be more on board, the way to do it is just by leading by example, and it may take a long time. But, slowly they may or may not come around. Mm-hmm. I will say my husband has come around a lot from where he started when we first got married. So,
yeah. That's awesome. I also think it could be helpful to kind of think about why your spouse isn't on board. If they're not on board, maybe it's because they think it's going to be too expensive. So you just need to have a conversation about the money, really. You know what I mean? So really,
yeah. Or maybe it's because they feel like they're not going to have what they want. The cheeses, right? And then you can say, well, we'll still buy these Cheez-Its and they'll be yours and you can eat them after the kids go to bed. Or you can say, hey, would you be open to me trying to make Cheez-Its? And if that would be hit that same craving.
Yeah, feel satisfied with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Yeah, because a lot of things you can make. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You are really good at that. I see so many of your Instagram posts where you're making like such good like food that you would think you can't have, but you make it in a way that's still nutritious, and it's so fun to see.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love to do, because everybody's like, oh, that means I can't have, Crunch Wrap, from Taco Bell. I'm like, well, I mean, maybe you shouldn't go through the drive-thru and get it, but like, let's make it at home. If you want to have a Crunch Wrap, let's make it.
Yeah, true. Good point. And what about kids? So if you have kiddos, I mean, I don't know if you experienced this since yours were kind of young and you were maybe able to bring them up in it.
No, you would assume that I would have been able to do that. My oldest is really difficult when it comes to food. And I think he went to school for kindergarten and first grade. And I think the being in that social situation where not everybody's eating the same thing, and he started noticing that his lunchbox looked a lot different than other people's lunchboxes. I think that kind of turned him off to the idea. But with kids, and I actually think this probably would work with a spouse too, making those things that are normal is really important.
Yeah.
So my son had a birthday party the other day, and he was like, Mom, can we get pizza? I was like, no, but I'll make pizza.
Right.
And I made pizzas. I made sourdough pizzas for like, I don't know, 20 kids or something. And
that's amazing.
And it was like, it was awesome. And like kids were like, this is the best pizza I've ever had. And my
like,
and my son's like, yeah, my mom made it. And I'm like, cool. Yeah.
I'm feeling silly good right now.
I know. Yeah, it felt awesome. But then we also he wanted a cookie cake. And so we made him a chocolate chip cookie cake with like marshmallow frosting. And some other kid came in and he's like, I didn't even know you could make cookies from scratch. I was like, yes, you can. Do you want some?
Yeah. It took me a while to realize brownies didn't always have to come from a box.
I know. Brownies were one of those things that I totally didn't want to learn how to make, because I was like, it's so easy. It's so easy. And they actually taste good. So many things from boxes don't taste good, but brownies, they have like unlocked that code.
Yeah. When a funny thing about that is like Hamburger Helper was like a thing like that for me. Yeah. Like I grew up eating Hamburger Helper, and it was kind of this nostalgic thing. And so I taught myself and off a few recipes to make like a homemade version of Hamburger Helper. And now it's like one of my absolute favorites of my kids, even though they didn't really grow up on Hamburger Helper. They're like, what's for dinner tonight? Homemade Hamburger Helper. And they're like, yes.
I make that too. I love it. It's so good. And it's so easy.
Yeah. I know that's one of those, that could be one of the 5 meals. Somebody else, like some kind of like Hamburger Helper type of thing. Everybody loves that. Yeah. Another thing I love that you said earlier is just how, and you've said this in your social media too, is that nutrition doesn't have to be complicated. So I don't know if you could give us, as we're kind of wrapping up here, a couple of tips for just keeping things simple in your home. Like what are some things that you do to just make it all smoother and easier for you?
Well, I try so I do like the meal planning thing, and then I try and kind of have, my friend Liz Hazelmeyer calls it rhythms in the kitchen, where you do your chicken on Sunday or whatever day. And then, you turn that into broth. And then from there, the broth gets turned into soup, or you use it to cook your rice. And I think for me anyway, meal planning is a huge one. And I know lots of people don't do it. It's fine if you don't want to. But like for me, for my brain, for the way I function, I need to know what's coming up. And that is just this huge lifesaver to me. And it just kind of takes that one more decision off my mind.
And are there certain nutrients that you're trying to get in, like on a daily or weekly basis with your family?
Oh, yeah, sure. So
kind of coolers.
Yeah, I mean, every meal we try and make a balanced meal with the fats and the carbs and the proteins. It's and those can all come from different sources. You know, it doesn't always have to be the same thing, but it's generally, and a lot of times it'll be a fat will be just like an avocado, just like a sliced avocado, and then a protein, just, I don't know, like the piece of chicken from the roasted chicken. And then with the roasted chicken, we've got some starchy vegetables. We've got carrots and we've got potatoes. And then on the side, we just put, a lump of or a serving of sauerkraut. So then we get our probiotics that way. Like all of those things are so simple and so easy to make. And, don't take any time. Like slicing up an avocado takes no time at all. Spooning out sauerkraut, you can buy sauerkraut or you can make it. Takes no time at all. And then even just putting a chicken in the oven, like again, it takes a long time in the oven, but you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So
I do find the Instant Pot. That's the best thing for me. My chicken in the Instant Pot.
Yeah, you just dump it in there.
So fast.
Yes, yeah, I think if you can sort of, I think it does take time. I think it's, like when you move into a new house or new place and you have no idea how to set it up because you haven't lived there before. If you've never attempted to cook all your meals or have home prepared meals, that you don't have to cook every single time, you can have leftovers or something. But if you've never done it, you kind of have to take some time to figure it out. Like our family, we've gotten to the point where we have figured out that if I make a big batch of soup at the beginning of the week, then we have lunch for the whole week. Usually. If I make enough. But like that is, since we homeschool and my husband works from home, that is a lifesaver for us because otherwise I'm having to stop
what you're doing.
Stop what I'm doing. Go make lunch and do. But if I have made that soup, then it's easy. It's done.
Yeah.
I think you just kind of have to figure out how your family works and figure out what's going to work for you.
And give yourself the grace to do that, right?
Yes, exactly. And learn from other people as much as you can. Like you, like me, like all these other people. Instagram is free. Like just go on and read some of those things or watch some of the videos and don't try and overcomplicate it. Just stick with your 5 things that you're trying to make. And if dinner fails, make a smoothie.
Yep. That's right. Get some protein smoothie in there and try again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's okay if you have to throw it away.
I love that. Oh, we've all been there. Any other advice or anything on your heart that you want to share that we haven't covered yet?
I just think I desperately want everybody to feel good. I want moms to feel good. I want children to feel good and nourished. And when you feel good and you feel nourished, you can do so much. But I also don't want people to feel stressed out or overburdened with it. And that can happen so easily. So I think that if you are feeling that way, just take a step back and try and get to the point of oversimplifying it. Yeah. And anytime you're feeling like that, like I'll get to that point probably once a month. And I'll be like, nope, can't do it. We're having pancakes for dinner.
Right. You gotta fix things. Right.
Right. You don't have to make a roasted chicken every night.
Yeah. And if people want to keep learning from you, how can they do that?
Okay, so I have a My website is fornutrientsake.com. I have 2 cookbooks on there that are for sale. They're really cheap. I have a podcast that I host with Christine Muldoon. It is called Modern Ancestral Mamas. And then I also have my Instagram, which is where I'm most active, and that is for Nutrient Sake.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for joining me and sharing all your wisdom. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.